And this is what we're going to get into today. This is what we're going to learn today, okay? It comes from the idea that there is a fine line between liberty and idolatry. That's a very fine line. And if you remember anything today, remember this idea that in our lives there's a fine line between liberty and idolatry. And so today we're going to learn how to spot idolatry in our lives, and we're going to learn what to do about it. Now, when I said what I just said right there, when I said, hey, we're going to learn about idolatry today, some of you immediately went, you just zoned out because you're thinking idolatry is some ancient problem, and I don't have that ancient problem. There is no statue of wood or metal or stone in the corner of my bedroom. I do not bow down to it. Clearly, idolatry is somebody else's problem. But before you go there and you just tune me out, consider this. Consider what idolatry is, okay? Idolatry happens when I look to someone or something to do what only God can do. Now, I want you to think about this verse as you look at it there on the screen for just a moment. The Bible does not tell us to run from very many things at all. We are to be people of courage, people of boldness. We don't run from, but there are a couple of times when the Bible says you should run from this. And here we are with the topic of idolatry, and the Bible says you need to run from idolatry. It is that dangerous to you. So let's get started. Let's kind of begin with this idea of how do I spot idolatry in our lives? And you all, it's very counterintuitive, but you begin right here. Ask yourself this question: what are the good things in my life? What are the good things in my life? Now, I told you this was going to be very counterintuitive, right? Because when we think about idolatry, our mind does not go to, oh, let me think about the good things. When we think about idolatry, we typically think about bad things, right? And so that's where our mind tends to run. But we need to remember, if you go back to the days of the Corinthian church, and you think about all the idols that were in their world and the temptation to worship those idols, all of those idols represented gods who promised and who offered good things. Now, you fast forward to today, and we can take any number of good things and we can elevate them to a place of prominence in our lives. And we can begin to kind of center on these things, and we can convince ourselves that through these good things, we're going to find fulfillment, we're going to find security, we're going to find hope, we're going to find identity. And if we're not careful, we begin to love these things more than we love God. And our behavior toward these things actually begins to look a whole lot like worship. But let me just give you some examples of good things in our lives that can become an idol for us and that we can actually wind up worshiping. First one that came to my mind was we can worship a relationship. Anybody can fall victim to that trap, right? We get into this relationship and we begin to say, this relationship is my security for the future. This relationship is my hope. This relationship is my identity. And we begin to ascribe to the relationship things that only belong to God. Have you ever seen it happen? I have. We can worship our family. Our family can become an idol for us. And I know this is a sticky one, and we love family here at Celebration. We talk about family. We promote family. But let me tell you, if you're just running to Disney every single weekend so you can be with your family, it may be that you've elevated your family into the wrong spot, because as important as our family must be to us, it's not our God, okay? That's a line we can't cross. In fact, we should be putting our focus on pointing our family toward God, not turning our family into a God, okay? And there's a real fine line there. Remember, there's a fine line between liberty and idolatry. But man, our family can become a God to us, become an idol to us. Let me tell you, sports. And we live in one of the most sports-crazed places on the planet. And it's real easy to cross that line from liberty to idolatry when it comes to sports. And as I'm thinking about this, I'm about it two ways. One, our own participation, or more importantly, our kids' participation in sports. Because I'm going to be, every one of you all's children are athletes. They're unbelievable. They're mind-blowing. And so it makes sense, doesn't it, to say, well, my kid is a mind-blowing athlete, therefore. We will be in every travel team ever created. And when travel sports seasons come, see you later, church. We'll be back in 6 months when travel season is over. That's one way that sports can get out of line for us. What about as a fan? Can we cross that line? Oh yeah. It's really easy. Let me tell you, back when FSU was really dominant in football, and that's been a couple of years, I get it. But back when FSU was really dominant in football, as a pastor, I would hold my breath every Saturday night when there was a night game. Because if FSU lost that game, church attendance the next morning would be down 20%. So you can fall into that trap of worshiping sports pretty quickly. What about politics? Can you fall into that trap of worshiping there? Boy, you can. It is so easy to say, all of my hope's in that candidate. All of my hope is in that policy. All of my hope is in this government action or lack of action, as it may be. And the problem with that is if we begin to look at government as our source of provision, is that not what God does? Isn't God the one who provides for us, who takes care for us, who provides for us? What about beauty? Can we worship beauty? Oh, big time. Big time. And we can get obsessed with how we look, okay? And we can be like running to the gym all hours there. We can be all about what clothing we wear. We can be all about diet and all about what we eat. And we can just convince ourselves that if we look a certain way, then we're going to be happy. Okay, and it's very easy for us to fall in that trap of worshiping beauty. Now, I want to just be real clear here. Am I saying that we can't invest in any of those things? That's not at all what I'm saying, okay? God brings us good things. Aren't you glad? Aren't you glad that God brings us good things? He never intended for those good things to become our idol, because no matter how good those things may be, no matter how important those things may be, if we cross the line between liberty and idolatry and we set them up as our God, they're always going to disappoint. And if we trade God for the idol, we're falling, the Bible says, for a lie. So if you want to see if you have an idolatry problem, just look at the good things in your life, because there's a fine line between liberty and idolatry. And if you're not careful, you can cross that line before you even know it.